"Buckminster, stop it!" It took Turner a moment to figure out who had just spoken. He saw that his mother had stood, that she had one hand against her face, another clenched into the checks of her apron. Since there was no one in the room but the three of them, it had to have been her. But that couldn't be. Turner looked at his father, who was coming to just about the same conclusion. "Turner," his mother said quietly, "go upstairs and change into something you can hit a baseball in, and I'll stop by Mrs. Cobb's this afternoon." Turner stood. "Go on now," she said tightly. He wondered what might happen as soon as he left the dining room, and he was more than a little tempted to dawdle. But his father's face, which no longer looked as if it were facing only the seraphim, was convincing enough, and the prospect of wearing something that had not been made for church was too good for him to wait any longer, so he sprinted upstairs. When he came back down, he was in a shirt and trousers he had found lying at the foot of his bed, a shirt and trousers that would never have marked him as a minister's son. After just a single stealthy moment of listening at the closed dining room doors, there was absolute silence, he leaped out into the free air and headed straight for the hay meadow, the memory of the driftwood in his hands. But a storm was boiling up in more places than in his dining room. Dinner had taken long enough for thickened thunderheads to swell off the coast. Turner felt the heavy air they dropped, hearing their rumbling like the distant chariots of the Assyrians. He ran to the shore to see them come in. Before he reached the hay meadow, the first big raindrops were plopping down and exploding in the yellow dust. They fell sudden and cold on his back. The wind bucked up, shifted once and then again, and set the buoys out on the Kennebec, bowing towards him. When Turner looked over the river, he saw an iron sheet of rain coming toward him, lit up from behind through a rip in the dark purple of the clouds. He thought suddenly of Lizzie on the shore and flung out his arms and opened his mouth as a sheet came upon him. If Mrs. Cobb had seen him just then, she would have thought he was grinning like a loon and would have scampered off to tell the new minister that his son hadn't the sense God had given him and that he was standing out in the middle of the storm with his arms spread out and his mouth open. And she would have been right about him grinning like a loon.